Hi there. Welcome to an online lecture where we're going to consider the different sorts of errors that require a suspense account. I'm Gareth. Now remember, a suspense account is required when the trial balance doesn't balance. So if the debit column does not equal the credit column, we require a suspense account to make it temporarily balance while we identify what the error is. Well, why wouldn't the trial balance balance? Well, it's because one of my original double entries wouldn't have balanced. So we require a suspense account where an original double entry did not balance. So where for at least one of our transactions, the debit did not equal the credit. Well, what sort of errors could that mean? Well, firstly, it could be that we posted a single-sided double entry. Perhaps we actually only posted one side of the double entry. We didn't post a double entry at all. We posted a single entry effectively. So for example, let's say for the payment of salaries, let's say that all we posted was a credit to the bank of £100. We did not post a debit. That is not a balancing double entry, so I immediately know the trial balance won't balance. I immediately know it's going to require a suspense account. Now, how would I post a correcting journal for this? Well, this is a process you'll get more and more familiar with. But we missed the debit. We missed the debit, which would be to salaries expense. Expense is a part of the dead. So I think to correct it, I would need to debit salaries expense by 100, as we should have done, but we missed. And we're going to credit the suspense 100 to eliminate the suspense account that would have been created. So single-sided double entries will require a suspense account. Another type of error is if both sides of the double entry are posted to the same side. So for instance, this time, let's say our payment of salaries was posted as debit salaries expense 100, which is what it should have been, but also a debit to bank. Now actually we should have credited bank because paying salaries will reduce the asset of our bank account. Let's say we mistakenly debited bank. Now that double entry doesn't balance. We've got two debits, no credit. We've debited a total of 200 and nothing on the credit side. So I know immediately that because the double entry doesn't balance, the trial balance wouldn't balance, and therefore we would be using a suspense account. Well, how would I correct this sort of problem? Well, the debit to salaries expense is fine. That's showing the expense we've suffered. That's okay. The problem is with the bank. We debited it by 100 when we should have credited it by 100. Now what you can hopefully imagine is that means that the bank's out by a total of £200 because we've debited it, which means we've added to the asset when we should have credited it. We should have knocked off. Now if we've added 100 when we should have knocked off 100, we're going to be a total of 200 out. So I think what I'm going to need to do to correct this is to credit the bank by a total of 200, which you can perhaps imagine cancels out the original debit we put in and then puts in a further credit of 100 that we should have done in the first place. So you can see why I need to post double the amount of the original entry because the original entry was on the wrong side. So I need to credit the bank 200 and I would debit the suspense 200, which should clear the suspense account that was originally set up. And I know it's going to hit the suspense account because the original double entry did not balance. We only had items on the debit side. So a second error that will affect the suspense account is where both sides of the double entry are posted to the same side, so both posted to debit, or equally if they were both posted to credit. And then another type of error that will affect the suspense account is if an unequal double entry is posted. So for instance, for the payment of salaries, let's say we debited the salaries expense by 100, and let's say that's the correct figure. But let's say we only credited the bank by 10 by mistake. We just forgot the other 0. Now obviously that original double entry does not balance. We've got 100 on the debit side and only 10 on the credit side. That would mean that the ultimate trial balance would not balance. That would lead to a suspense account. Now in this case, how am I going to correct it? Well, assuming that the salaries were the £100, well, the debit to the salaries expense is correct. The problem is I've only credited the bank by 10. I should have credited it by the same 100. So I think to correct this, I will credit the bank by another 90. You see, this time I need to post the difference between the 100 and the 10. So I need to credit the bank by a further 90 to basically take the overall credit up to a total of 100. We've got the original credit of 10. So if I another credit by another 90, I'll take it up to a total of 100. The debit going to the suspense account. And I know it's going to the suspense account because the original double entry did not balance. So in this online lecture, we're just thinking about the kind of errors that would require a suspense account. Basically any error where the original double entry does not balance, such as a single-sided double entry, so just posting to the credit side, where both sides of the double entry have been posted to the same side, so if we post both to the debit side, for instance, or an unequal double entry being posted, so 100 on the debit side, 10 on the credit side. So if the original double entry does not balance, you can see that the correcting double entry will always involve the suspense account. We've got a credit to suspense there, debit to suspense there, debit to suspense there.